Hi. If you've decided to audition for Indiana's Junior All-State Band, then you've found the right video. My name is Betsy Coe, and today I'd like to talk with you a bit about the lyrical etude for the 2026 auditions. This bit of music is by Italian flutist Ernesto Kohler. He lived during the second half of the 19th century, and music ran in his family. His father was also a professional flutist. Although the music is usually played faster than the marked tempo of quarter note equals 68, you'll find that it sounds just as nice at the slower tempo. The word etude comes from the French étudier, which means to study. Whenever I start a new etude, I ask myself what it is that I'm supposed to be studying in this piece of music. It could be a musical idea or a skill. In this particular piece of music, Kohler is trying to help us master the articulation pattern of slur 3, tongue 1. This might be an articulation pattern that you're less used to playing. Let's work on it with something simpler than the etude itself. The first half of the etude is in C major. So let's take the C major scale and use that articulation pattern. Notice that I put an extra CBC at the end so that I would work out into an even group of 4. The second half of the etude is in the key of A minor, which is the relative minor key of C major. They both have a key signature of no sharps and no flats. Minor keys are a little more complicated than major keys because for any minor key, we have 3 different kinds of scales that we could possibly use. We're going to use A harmonic minor because that is what will help you in measures 11 and 12 of your excerpt. So what this means is that we're going to follow the key signature of nothing until we get to the 7th note. Then we're going to raise that G to a G sharp. Think about that while you listen to me play the scale. Now, let's add in the articulation pattern of slur 3, tongue 1. 3 and 4 and. Change is what keeps things interesting, right? Once you have a handle on the notes and articulation patterns in this etude, it's time to start thinking about dynamics. You need to alternate every 2 bars between mezzo forte and piano during the first 2 lines. The key to dynamics is contrast. So you want your listener to hear a big difference between your mezzo forte and your piano. Many people find it to be difficult to play in tune and with good tone quality when they're very soft. If this is a challenge for you, then you can consider making your mezzo forte a little on the louder side. That way you can create a contrast without getting too terribly soft. Also, don't forget to observe the staccato on the final quarter note of the second line. That will give things a nice, delicate feel. Now that I have you thinking about dynamics, let's listen back to the first 8 bars. The third challenge in this etude is tuning. You probably already know that the high notes on the flute can be extremely sharp. The highest note in this etude is E natural, and there are 3 of them. I'd suggest that you find those 3 E naturals and put a downward arrow above each of them. That will help remind you to listen carefully and know that you may need to make an adjustment. Now, the first E natural happens right away in measure 1. Let's look at measure 1 a little more carefully. If you remove the second and third notes, which are an A and a B, that leaves us with G, C, E, and those 3 notes belong to a C major arpeggio. I love it when I can find a pattern like that because it helps anchor my ear and I know where to place the E more easily. Next, we'll talk about some concrete things that you can do to adjust the pitch on your E natural. Besides listening carefully, there are 2 physical things that you can do to help with the tuning on the high E natural. The first is to change the fingering by not pressing down on the D sharp key with your pinky. This will flatten the note noticeably. Listen and watch my pinky and you'll see what I'm talking about. I'll start with the pinky on. Try it on your own flute and you'll see what I'm talking about. The second thing that you can do to help with the tuning on the high E natural is to adjust your lower jaw position. We have a lot more flexibility with our lower jaw than we tend to think that we have. So pull it slightly back and inward, and that will allow you to aim your air more directly downward into the flute. I'm going to start without thinking about that at all, and then pull my lower jaw back. And of course, this is something that would be excellent for you to practice with your tuner. If you practice it over a couple of days, you'll be amazed at how easily you will get a handle on controlling your pitch. Here are a few more tips for working on tuning. First of all, absolutely use a tuner. You can either use a physical tuner that sits on your music stand or an app that's on your phone. Either option works great. Now, let's go back to those 3 notes from the first measure of the etude. They were G, C, and E. When I'm practicing something like this, I like to practice it against a drone. In this case, I would drone a C because it's a C major chord and C is the root of the chord. Notice that I played it down an octave at first. It's easier to tune down there. And so by practicing there, you get your ears used to the proper distance between pitches. And then you return to the written octave and it should go much easier. Now, if your tuner is not able to generate pitches, that's not a problem at all. All you have to do is go to the search bar in YouTube and type in, for example, C drone, and you should come up with several videos that will give you a few minutes of the droned pitch that you're looking for. Finally, let's talk about a few spots where you might be flat. This would mostly be the 2 spots in the first and second line where you suddenly have to drop down to a soft dynamic. Be sure you support your air extra mindfully. You can also push your lower jaw just a little bit forward, and this will help raise your airstream. I like to imagine my favorite color, purple, today, and visualize my airstream as purple, and that helps me to think about raising it. But most of all, use your ears. Hopefully you'll be right in the pocket. I hope I've given you plenty to think about. If you have questions, leave them below in a comment, and best of luck with your audition.